Just because you choose to forgive somebody doesn't mean you have to rebuild that relationship if you do not want to. Sometimes trust is just so far gone and so far broken that there's really nothing you can do but just say thank you for the experiences, thank you for the lessons. There's this common ideology that we have to rebuild this relationship. We're family. We've been together 5 years. We've been best friends for 10 years. Why wouldn't you want to rebuild this relationship? And please don't get caught in that sunken cost fallacy. For anybody who doesn't know what that is, what's up, y'all? Welcome to the Hood Soft Life podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina, and in this podcast, we talk about navigating the challenges that come with growing up in the hood and leaving those challenges behind for a soft life. Growing up in the hood comes with its own set of challenges. But what people don't tend to tell you is not only do those challenges follow you once you've made it out physically, but they tend to intensify. So I'm bringing you along on my journey. I'm going to be honest with you about the struggles and the lessons that I'm learning to achieve a soft life. In this episode, we're going to be talking about forgiveness, reconciliation, and how the two just aren't the same, and why forgiveness is so important for you. So let's get started. All right, y'all. I hope you guys had a great 2 weeks since the last time I saw you. I am tired. I can't even lie to you. I am exhausted. We are nearing the end of the school year. Everybody is agitated, aggravated, tired. So I hope that you guys are having a better week than I have had. And, we're almost at the end. And so I just want to check in, see how everybody's doing, see if everybody's holding up okay. I'm doing all right. I have some personal things that I'm going through, and I kind of want to talk about them. We'll see if I bring them up in an episode in the future or not. I haven't decided yet. But a few things that I do want to talk about is, one, my birthday is on Wednesday, May 21st, and I'm very excited to be 25, a quarter of a century. Can you believe it? So I'm excited about that. I am officially 1 month away from going to Colombia, and I am so excited. I don't know if I've talked about it on the podcast yet, but I'm going to Medellin, Colombia, and I'm very excited. I'll be there for about a week-ish, and we just finalized plans, my friend Paris and I, so we'll be stopping in a couple of different places. We'll be going to Miami first, Colombia, and then we'll go to Panama, and then we'll come back home, and so I'm very excited. I don't know if anybody is aware. I don't know if I've said anything about it on this podcast, but Spanish is my first language, so I'm very excited to put it to use, because every single day I feel like I'm losing a little bit more of it because I don't use it at all anymore. I live alone, and there's no reason for me to use it anymore, as opposed to when I was living back home. I spoke in a Spanish household, so I'm really excited to use it, and I want to keep practicing a little bit before I go, just to make sure that while I'm sitting there, I'm not having that brain reboot while I'm trying to talk to somebody. But I'm very excited about that. So I'm just trying to push through these last couple of weeks of the school year and really just get to vacation time. And so that is where we are. Don't forget to wish me a happy birthday on Wednesday, by the way. And you can do that on any social media platforms, either at the HSL Pod on TikTok and Instagram, or you can follow me on my personal pages, Sabrina, SABRINAA.LIZET, both on TikTok and Instagram. Appreciate you, boo. All right, let's go ahead and jump into today's topic. All right, we're just going to jump straight into the meat and potatoes for this episode, and I want to jump in with forgiveness first. Forgiveness and reconciliation are two different things, and I feel like there's this common misconception that the two go together or that the two are the same thing. They are not, and we're going to be talking a little bit about that today in our episode. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. And I have the definition for forgiveness right here. So this definition, I got it from the Greater Good magazine. It's a science-based magazine from Berkeley University. And psychologists generally define forgiveness as a conscious, deliberate decision to release feelings of resentment or vengeance towards a person or a group who has harmed you, regardless of whether they actually deserve your forgiveness. And the reason I wanted to bring up this definition is because I feel like when you're immersed in a language for so long, and especially if it's your first language, you kind of have an idea of what each word means, but you don't really know what the true definition is. And so I just wanted to talk about that first and really understand the part of how it is a personal decision for yourself to be able to let go of vengeance, resentment, those internalized feelings. This is an internal process for you and you alone to be able to free yourself from those negative feelings that are holding you back. And trust me, I have been and I am still very guilty of not believing that holding on to a grudge will cause me any harm. And as I get older, I'm starting to realize like all it is doing is bringing me harm and causing me pain because I am still clutching onto this situation that has caused me pain from years ago and bringing that pain with me everywhere I go when I have since been removed from that situation, removed from these people, etc. And I really wanted to just talk about this because I've struggled with this for a long time, and I'm ready to start letting some things go so that I can move forward in my life and so that I'm not going to be stuck in the same position that I feel like I have been for the last couple of years. As I get older and I start to learn a little bit more about what forgiveness means and understanding that it's an internal process, I've come to a point where I've realized that it's really just for me to be able to let go of the pain that I've been holding on to. Holding on to that grudge really just has me reliving that same pain and that same trauma over and over and over again. And maybe I might not feel exactly the same as I did when I was first harmed because time has gone by, but I will say that time has not eased the pain because I keep holding on to it instead of releasing that energy. At the time when I was younger, I really felt that forgiveness was another route of saying, I excuse your behavior and what you did was okay to me. And I never really felt that way. And I was just like, what you did was not okay to me. And I don't excuse your behavior. I do not forgive you because forgiveness in my mind meant excusing your behavior when that's not the reality. The reality is I can choose to forgive you because I'm letting go of that resentment and that vengeance and those negative thoughts and those negative feelings that are holding me back so that I can live a better life. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you, one, deserve the forgiveness, or two, that I have to tell you that I forgive you. I think that's another thing too. A lot of people feel like they need to tell the person that they forgive them, or there are some really entitled people who feel like they need to hear you say that you forgive them if they've caused you pain. I don't know if anybody has ever been in that situation where it's just like, I want to tell you about this thing that I did to you behind your back because I really need you to forgive me. That's very selfish, but that's a conversation for another day. And you don't need to tell the person who harmed you that you forgive them. If you don't want to have a conversation with them about it, you are within your right to do that. You can decide for yourself, I think I'm ready to forgive this person. I think I'm ready to move on. And when I was getting ready for this episode and just doing the inner work and just doing the research, what I found is that just because you forgive somebody doesn't mean that pain is going to go away. And that kind of lifted a huge burden on my shoulders because I felt like I was never going to be able to forgive someone for the harm that they caused me because that pain was still there. And I had this automatic assumption that if I forgive somebody, shouldn't the pain be gone? Shouldn't it not cause me any harm? I shouldn't feel any type of way about it, but I do. And I think that that's just a human experience. There will always be a scar there, but it doesn't hurt as much as when you initially got the injury in the first place. But you can move on. It doesn't hinder you from living your day-to-day life. You don't feel this impending resentment and even hatred, which is a strong word, but you don't feel that towards the person who caused you the harm. You can still go about your day-to-day life, not worried about them, not worried about what harm you're going to cause them, getting your get back, anything like that. You can just move freely and move peacefully. And it's okay to still feel pain from that situation. It is okay to still feel hurt from that situation. I don't ever want to excuse what somebody did to you, and I don't want you to feel like you have to sweep your feelings under the rug to say that you forgive somebody. That's not the case at all. You take as long as you need to be able to get through that situation. And there are just some situations, no matter how much time has gone by, no matter how much self-work you do, it will always be a little painful, and that is okay. I used to think that holding on to a grudge was really doing something for me. I really thought that it would let the person know, one, like, I don't mess with you because you did something to me, you harmed me, and letting them know, like, I'm not rocking with you. But I also felt like it was some sort of quote unquote protection for me to hold on to this grudge because this person harmed me. So now I'm going to hold this grudge because it lets them know that I'm not going to allow you to do this to me again. but I'm also bringing that with me into other situations, right? I've talked about this a few times on the podcast about having struggles with building relationships. And I really do struggle with trusting people. And I feel like a lot of that comes from holding on to these grudges that I've been holding on to for years, pretty much my whole life. And I'm thinking that they're protecting me when in reality I have built these walls. And yes, while sometimes building a wall will protect you, it will also harm you from the good things that are trying to come your way as well. And so I feel like I've missed out on some good opportunities to build relationships, whether they were romantic or friendships or even just working relationships. I wasn't able to build them because I had these walls so high up, thinking that I was protecting myself, when in reality, these grudges were just pushing me away from people who could have blessed me in so many different ways. Reflecting on holding on to those grudges has really taught me a lot, because when I take the time to really think about what have I gained from those experiences and what have I gained from holding on to those grudges, I've gained nothing. If I'm being completely honest, there is no good that has come from that. It has repelled relationships. It has repelled friendships. It has repelled my ability to just be able to connect with people day to day. I feel like I always have to keep my guard up. I can't really trust people. And because of that, I've been stuck in a certain realm when it comes to building relationships and when it comes to moving forward. And I'm young, I'm about to be 25, and I still have a lot of learning to do and a long ways to go. And my life is definitely not over, and I'm not stuck here forever. But I feel like when it came to building relationships, it was a very, very slow, painfully slow increase with the relationships that I have now and my ability to get to certain places with the relationships I have now, because I held on to these grudges that led to trust issues, that led to me feeling like I was protecting myself when in reality I wasn't. And I had this misconception that I was doing something beneficial for myself when I really wasn't. And I feel like there are a lot of misconceptions about forgiveness and what that means. So I just want to address a couple of them right now. Okay. The first misconception that I feel like a lot of people have is that forgiving somebody means that you are excusing their behavior, when that is not true. Forgiveness is so that you can move on with your life without holding on to that resentment, that anger, that frustration, really just any of those negative feelings that are holding you back from the life that you want to have, the life that you deserve to have. Should you get rid of these feelings? Should you be able to forgive somebody? The second misconception is that when you forgive somebody, the pain is supposed to just go away. The pain will not magically go away because you choose to forgive somebody, and it doesn't mean that it's over, it's done with, there's not a problem anymore. That was, like I mentioned, my biggest struggle when it came to forgiving people, because that pain was still there. But in all honesty, when you forgive somebody, what you really are removing is that negative energy that you are carrying around, because not only are you perpetuating that energy towards the person if you are still in contact with them, but you're also perpetuating that negative energy towards others. And even though you may think that you are not putting that on other people because it's not their fault, you may be in some way, shape, or form that is so small that you don't notice it, and maybe they don't even notice it. But it's not until you do that inner work that you realize, I have some things that I need to work on. There are some things that I'm taking out on others when they don't deserve it. I've gotten to a point in my life where I've questioned if I am capable of forgiveness. If I'm being completely honest, I used to have a reputation within my friend group, one of my older friend groups, where I was the person who you knew wasn't going to forgive you. You knew that you weren't going to be able to reconcile with Sabrina if you did something to her. It just wasn't going to happen. And a part of me, now that I'm about to be 25, is really looking at myself and thinking, like, am I capable of forgiveness? And long story short, I am. And there are some people that I have forgiven and even tried to reconcile with, but there are a couple of people who I have yet to forgiven. And I feel like I've tried a couple of times, but I just couldn't let go of the feelings. And, I would do so much research of like, how do I let go of these feelings? How do I stop feeling these feelings? And people just say, you just let go, just let go, just let go. And it's like, it's not something tangible. Like if I hold this TV remote in my hand and I let it go, it's gone, right? Like it's not that same feeling when it comes to your emotions. So how can I just let something go when I can't even hold on to it physically? But you know what? I think that that's interesting because I am holding on to it, not physically, but just mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So I guess the next question is, how do I let it go mentally, emotionally, and spiritually? Because I feel like it's human nature for you to hold on to things in those aspects, mentally, emotionally, physically. But something you really have to learn is letting go of those things. I don't think anybody ever teaches you how to hold a grudge. You just automatically know. But what you do have to be taught is how to let go of that. And that was just something I really just thought of. So I find that very interesting as I use that physical example of just like, you really have to do the self work and the learning within yourself to figure out how to let go of things in the spiritual, the emotional, and the mental aspects of your life, because they're things that we're not necessarily taught. And a lot of this is the human experience that you learn along the way. You just develop, you just know, right? Nobody taught us how to breathe. We just do it. Nobody teaches you how to hold a grudge. You just hold it. You just already know how to do that. So now you have to do the work to figure out, okay, I know how to hold a grudge. Do I know how to get rid of one now? What I will say is that forgiveness and pain can coexist. The two things can be true. Somebody can cause you pain to the point where you've held a grudge, and you can still feel pain after you've forgiven them. Like I mentioned, sometimes you will be left with a scar, and a scar doesn't hurt as much as the initial wound, but that doesn't mean that you've forgotten about the initial wound, so that's okay. But I think once you've gotten to a point where you don't think about getting get back on somebody, where you don't think about vengeance and harming them, and you don't have these negative feelings towards them, I think that that's a good and solid step towards forgiveness. I'm not an expert on anything. I just talk to you about my personal experiences and my personal life and what I've learned. And I feel like I've gotten to a point with some of the people who have caused me pain where I can say that I don't feel these feelings towards them, but I'm still unsure if I feel solid in forgiving them. But I'm proud of myself to at least get to this step, because for a long time I felt like it was very, very much impossible. So what I will say is baby steps. You really just have to take it one day at a time, especially depending on the situation. Everybody's situation is different. It affects people differently, Everybody's situation is very, very different, and everybody is very different. So how you handle something and how you decide to go through and cope with something is different than the next person. And take your time. As long as you are genuinely investing into that self-work and getting yourself to a position where you are healthy and this doesn't affect your life, take your time. Take your time and move at a steady pace that works for you. Oh, this is my favorite one. The last misconception that people have about forgiveness, and I feel like the biggest one people have about forgiveness, is that reconciliation is required. And we're going to talk a little bit about what reconciliation is and the definition of all of that. But in case you don't really know what reconciliation is, it's rebuilding the relationship that was broken, or the trust was broken within that relationship for whatever reason. And this can be with anybody. This is the definition that I found off Google, and it says reconciliation is to restore a friendly relationship between two people. I don't really like that definition because it comes across as if you can only forgive a friend, or it can only be on a friendly level where you try to restore a relationship, and that's not true. You can reconcile with a coworker, with a partner, with a family member. You can reconcile with other people in different types of relationships. So I actually came up with my own definition of reconciliation that I like a lot better, and maybe I'm biased, but my definition is to restore a relationship beyond its previous condition with intentions from both parties of changing past behavior that was harmful and accepting the changed behavior to create a stronger relationship. I feel like there's this norm in our society that when you forgive somebody, you're supposed to just go back to the way things were. And that doesn't work that way all the time. Some situations are greater than others where the trust is severely broken and you don't even know how you're going to be able to get back to that point where you initially were. And sometimes you may already know that your line, your boundary is crossed. And if somebody crosses that line, the consequence is there is no reconciliation. And that's within your right to say that. Okay, let's go ahead and move into the part where we talk about reconciliation. And I just gave you my definition on what that is. So let's just talk about the difference between reconciliation and forgiveness very quickly. So as I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, forgiveness is an internal process that's just for you, whereas reconciliation is a joint process. It requires you and the other party to be willing to work on the relationship and restore it, and to make changes to be able to have a healthy and happy relationship moving forward. The only way that you're going to be able to reconcile a relationship is if both parties are willing. Everybody needs to be honest. Everybody needs to be held accountable if that is necessary for both parties. And it's going to require a lot of work. And that's the other misconception that people have about reconciliation in general, is that it's supposed to be easy. It's just supposed to be automatic and go right back to the way things were. And that's not true. It requires a lot of work. When you think about reconciliation and rebuilding a relationship, something is broken. If I broke my plate right before I was about to serve myself food, I wouldn't just tape it and then put the food on it anyways. No, I would need to take the time to rebuild the plate, if this is my only plate, of course, to be able to have a sturdy foundation to be able to eat off of it again. Will my plate be the same as it was before I broke it? No. Will it be sturdy enough to be able to handle this meal and other future meals moving forward? Yes, depending on how I decided to rebuild the plate that I already broke. And the same thing goes for relationships. It's going to take a lot of work from both parties to be able to rebuild the trust that was broken. And you also need to understand that that relationship will probably never be the same as it used to be, depending on the situation. And you have to be okay with that. And not just the person who may have caused the harm, but also the person who is trying to reconcile and move forward and forgive the person, because that is hard. And the best example I can give you is if a couple is in a relationship, right? Let's say we have a man and a woman who are in a relationship and one party cheats on the other, and they decide that they want to stay together and they want to work through their relationship. They both have to be willing to work on this relationship. They both have to be honest with each other, take accountability for their own actions, and continue to do that work over and over and over again. It is hard work for the person who did the cheating, because they need to go out of their way for themselves to be able to restrain themselves from doing that in the future, and to proving to their partner that they can trust them, they can forgive them, rebuilding that trust, and doing it genuinely, not just because you got caught and you don't want to get in trouble, you don't want to lose this person, but because you genuinely don't want to hurt this person again in the future. And for the person who was hurt, the person who was cheated on, you have to do the hard work of trusting that your partner isn't going to do that to you again, that you can forgive them, that you can trust them, that you don't need to be hovering over their shoulder. And sometimes that works out for people and people make that work. Sometimes that's not the case. Reconciliation doesn't always have to happen. Just because you choose to forgive somebody doesn't mean you have to rebuild that relationship if you do not want to. Sometimes trust is just so far gone and so far broken that there's really nothing you can do but just say thank you for the experiences, thank you for the lessons, and gracefully bow out. And there is nothing wrong with that. And the thing about reconciliation is that you alone can decide if you want to be able to reconcile with another person. While it is a joint effort, you are 50% of that effort. You are 50% of that decision. And if you decide, I do not want to reconcile, despite the fact that the person who harmed you does, it doesn't matter. If you're not willing to reconcile, you have every right to say, I appreciate you wanting to reconcile, but at this moment in time, I just don't see that happening. I need to be alone. I need to be by myself. I need to work through this. And if reconciliation is possible in the future, then I can reach out. And if it's not, I need you to respect my boundaries. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is this common ideology that we have to rebuild this relationship. We're family. We've been together 5 years. We've been best friends for 10 years. Why wouldn't you want to rebuild this relationship? And please don't get caught in that sunken cost fallacy. For anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's essentially like, I've spent so much money or I've spent so much time on this relationship. I don't want that to all go to waste. I'd rather have been in a relationship with somebody for 5 years and leave because they crossed a boundary than stay another 5 years and they possibly continue to cross my boundaries. And all I did was put myself in a position to continue to get hurt because I didn't leave, because I thought that the 5 years I had wasted would have been worse. It would have been worse for me to leave instead of me staying, and now I've wasted 10 years instead. So please don't get caught up in that sunken cost fallacy. If you feel like your line is crossed, if you feel like you cannot forgive them, you are within your right to say that. You are within your right to do that. And you can decide if you want to move on with or without that person. But only you can decide that for yourself. There are going to be other people that try to convince you, that try to sway you, that try to say, oh, it's not that big a deal. It shouldn't be this hard. Why can't you just forgive them? As challenging as it can be sometimes, I really need you to just cut out the noise, not listen to what they have to say, because at the end of the day, you are the person in those shoes. You are the only person that's going to have to live with those consequences good or bad, you are the only person that's going to have to live through that experience. And if they wanted to do that for themselves, then they're more than welcome to do that. But they cannot make the decision for you. You have to decide what goes against your line and what is within perfect reason for yourself. I want to talk to y'all a little bit about why I chose to talk about this week. And the first thing, like I mentioned, is that I've struggled a lot with forgiveness, with holding grudges, with the inability to reconcile with people and how that's affected my life, especially now that I'm about to be 25 and just taking, inventory of like what I've done in the last 25 years. And not just because I want to see where I'll be in the next 25 years, but more so just because sometimes I need to take a moment to really acknowledge like where I've grown and all the good things that I've done in my life, because you get caught up in your day-to-day life and it's hard to recognize when you've grown. It's hard to recognize when you've become a new person, and next thing you know, you become a new person in front of your own eyes, and it's not until you see this drastic change in the mirror that you realize like I've really grown as a person. And I've done that and I've taken inventory, and with me moving to DC, I definitely see a different version of myself, but that doesn't mean I'm perfect. And that doesn't mean that I don't have character flaws and there aren't some things that I want to fix. And so that's really what I've been taking the time to look at, is just what are some character flaws that I have? What are some things that are holding me back from the life that I want to have? And the biggest thing is my inability to forgive my parents. And I'm going to keep this as vague as possible because I have siblings who love my parents and they care about my parents, and I don't want to ever use this platform to bash my parents or anything like that. So being as vague but still as vulnerable as possible, like I have a very strained relationship with my parents, and that strained relationship, I've been holding on to that forever pretty much. And I've grown to be this person who is very distrusting, and it's hard to build relationships with me, and it's hard to get to know me, and it takes a very, very long time to get to know me. And I am very, very grateful for the friends that I have who have been nothing but patient with me, because they really didn't have to stick around this long. And I've known these friends for upwards of 8 years at this point, which is crazy. But I've known them for such a decent amount of time now, and they've just been so patient. And I feel like the Sabrina they met at the beginning of our college career to the Sabrina they know now, almost 5 years out of college, is very, very different. And again, there are still things that I want to work on, but the only way for me to show up better in those relationships is for me to let go of the resentment that I have towards my parents and just moving forward. I'm not at a point where I want get back, quote unquote, on my parents or anything like that. But I think when I think about my situation and when I think about the pain that they have caused me, I still have these negative feelings towards them, and I don't want to feel that way. And I know that at some point I want to be married. I want to have children. I want to be able to raise children, have a good life, have a soft life. That is the whole point of this podcast. And I know that that's not going to happen until I start developing this quality to be able to forgive people and to be able to reconcile with people. I do understand that not everybody can have reconciliation, right? That's not always going to be the case, but just understanding that sometimes the situation doesn't warrant a complete cutoff, because that is something that I feel like I am pretty known for. It's just like, okay, whatever, forget it, and just leaving them alone. And I don't think that that's fair to people. Everybody makes mistakes, and just holding myself accountable for the things that I do as well. I think that if I want to move forward with my life, if I want to get to the point where I can be a good wife, be a good mom, be a better friend to the friends that I've had, thankfully, for years, because they are some amazing friends, I need to work on this quality. And, there are times where I've forgiven for smaller things, right? I feel like I haven't had any big fallouts with any of my friends or any of the people close to me, especially not anything as big as like what I've had with my parents. But should that time ever come, I want to be able to have that skill of being able to forgive people and to be able to reconcile and move forward and not hold this grudge, not only because despite that one incident, we've had years of a great friendship, but also just because it's for me. I don't want to be carrying around this weight and this negativity on my shoulders for the rest of my life. That's not fair to me. That's not fair to the person I end up marrying, if that's God's will, and that's not fair to the children I end up raising, if that's also God's will as well. And also just understanding that that's not fair to the people that I do have in my life, because even though I may feel and I may think that I am not projecting those feelings onto them, Chances are I am. All right, let's talk about the practical tips of moving towards forgiveness. There are 9. There are 9 of them. And the first one is to acknowledge your feelings. Allow yourself to feel hurt, angry, or betrayed, and write down your emotions to better understand the impact of your situation. It's one thing to feel your feelings and to acknowledge that you're upset in the moment, but you also have a life to live, you have things to do, and you may say, oh, I'm going to think about this later, I'm going to unpack this later, and then you don't. So just write it down if you have a moment. If you can do it at the end of the day, just write down how you're feeling and be honest with yourself. Nobody else has to read it. Number 2, reflect on the situation. Think about what specifically hurt you and why, and consider whether holding on to this pain is benefiting you or not. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that it's not. Number 3, practice self-compassion. Remind yourself that forgiveness is a process and it is not a quick fix. Be kind to yourself as you work through your feelings. 4, seek perspective. Try to understand the other person's point of view without excusing their actions. Try to understand the other person's point of view without excusing their actions. Reflect on whether their behavior was intentional or rooted in their own pain. 5, decide to forgive. Make a conscious decision to let go of the resentment, even if you still feel hurt. Remember that forgiveness is for your peace and not necessarily for reconciliation. 6, find a healthy outlet. Talk to a friend, a therapist, or journal your thoughts out. Engage in physical activity or expression to release pent-up emotion. 7, release the grudge. Practice visualization exercises, imagining yourself letting go of the hurt. Affirm your intention to move forward. I choose peace over pain. 8, create distance if needed. Sometimes physical or emotional distance from a person helps in healing. Prioritize your mental and emotional well-being. And 9, focus on personal growth. Channeling your energy into activities that make you feel fulfilled and empowered. Learn from experiences and use it as motivation for personal growth. All right, here are some practical tips for reconciliation as well. Again, these tips are just listed out, and I would really encourage you to read them. Again, they'll be in a carousel, they'll be in the description. Read them if you can and journal through some of them, which ones you think that you can handle, which ones you think are going to take you a little bit more time. Practical tips to work towards reconciliation. 1, assess your readiness. Be honest with yourself. Are you genuinely ready to rebuild the relationship? Consider whether both parties are willing to put in the effort. 2, open a line of communication. Start with a calm, respectful conversation to express your feelings. Clearly state your intentions to understand each other and potentially heal. 3, acknowledge the hurt. Allow both parties to express their feelings without interruption. Validate each other's emotions if applicable, even if you do not fully agree. 4, take responsibility. Admit to your own mistakes if applicable, and be accountable for your actions. Be open to apologizing genuinely without making excuses. 5, listen actively. Practice active listening by reflecting back on what you've heard. Avoid dismissing or minimizing another person's perspective. 6, set boundaries for moving forward. Discuss what both of you need to feel safe and respected. Agree on boundaries that will help you rebuild the trust. 7, create an action plan. Identify concrete steps both parties can take to rebuild trust. Set small, achievable goals such as consistent communication or respectful behavior. 8, be patient with the process. Accept that reconciliation takes time and consistent effort. Allow space for setbacks and be willing to recommit to the process. 9, seek mediation if needed. If conflicts persist, consider involving a neutral third party like a counselor. Mediation can be helpful in facilitating healthier communications and a resolution. 10, celebrate progress. Acknowledge small wins in rebuilding the relationship. Focus on how far you have come rather than dwelling on the past mistakes. I hope that those tips helped you both for forgiveness and for reconciliation. Looking up those tips and working with that list has really helped me understand how far I've come and how much further work I need to do for the future. And I really hope that that helps you out, because it can be hard to determine if you're ready to forgive somebody, what that looks like, what letting go looks like, what reconciliation could possibly look like. There are a lot of things when it comes to our emotional well-being that we don't necessarily learn, or some things that we have to unlearn. And so I hope that this list helps you with those steps. All right, y'all, we have reached the point where we are at the affirmation for this week's episode. And the affirmation for this week is: my heart is open to healing and I choose to move forward. I'm going to go ahead and repeat that 3 times. If you have the ability to close your eyes, close your eyes. If you want to write this down, however you want to speak this positivity onto your life, find a way to do it. And so, my heart is open to healing and I choose to move forward. My heart is open to healing and I choose to move forward. My heart is open to healing and I choose to move forward. All right, y'all, that is all I have for you for this episode. Let me know your thoughts in the comments about this week's episode. I know this is going to touch a couple of people. I let some people know what the topic for this week's episode was going to be ahead of time, and people are really interested. So I would love to hear your thoughts. I would love to hear what your comments are, what your questions are, what your tips are for forgiveness, reconciliation, especially letting things go emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Please, I am still working on that. So if you have any tips for me, leave them in the comments if you are watching this on YouTube. If you see me on social media platforms, the HSL Pod, both on TikTok and Instagram, please send me a DM or comment on any of our social media posts about this episode so that I can know. I need the tips, okay? Again, I'm not a professional. I just come here and talk to you about my personal lived experiences. So please, any tips that you have, I would really, really appreciate them. Again, that is all I have for you. You can follow us both on IG and TikTok, both at the HSL Pod. If you want to follow my personal pages, they are both Sabrina, SABRINAA.LIZET. And you can find me on Instagram and TikTok. Bye.